Welcome to Boston Harbor, the start of our tour through Boston National Historical Park and the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum. In this video, we'll follow the story of protests and revolution, from city streets to meeting houses to the very first wharf where colonists dumped tea into the harbor. We're standing by the old State House. In the 1700s, this was the seat of the British colonial government in Massachusetts. Laws, taxes, and royal orders were announced from its balcony. On March 5th, 1770, angry townspeople crowded this square, protesting the presence of British soldiers. Confusion, shouting, and gunfire followed. 5 colonists were killed here in what patriots called the Boston Massacre. Events at this building helped turn everyday anger into a powerful movement for independence. Our next stop is Old South Meeting House, one of Boston's most important gathering places. Imagine this building filled with more than 5,000 colonists squeezed into every pew and window ledge. On December 16, 1773, they argued for hours about a new tax on tea and whether the ships in the harbor should be sent back to Britain. According to legend, a shout went up and men headed toward the waterfront to take more direct action. From here you can see the Boston Tea Party ships and museum on the water. The real tea ships of 1773 were anchored in this harbor, loaded with thousands of chests of tea owned by the British East India Company. Tea was more than a drink. It was part of everyday life and a reminder of British control. The Tea Act said colonists had to accept this taxed tea or go without it. Many Bostonians decided that if British Parliament would not listen to their petitions and their meetings, they would make their protest impossible to ignore. Inside this meeting space, Samuel Adams and other Patriot leaders argued that being taxed without representation in Parliament was unfair and dangerous. Let's take a listen.
For if that cargo is unloaded, then you, the people of Boston, will be forced to pay this unjust tax on tea. And as we all know, this is not the first time Parliament has forced taxes upon us without our consent. It was only 8 short years ago, in 1765, that Lord Grenville saw fit to tax our letters, our newspapers, all of our printed documents, under the Stamp Act. The many were outraged by the Stamp Act, many set to the streets.
Now we're boarding a full-scale replica of one of the tea ships, the Eleanor. In 1773, ships like this were floating warehouses, packed with crates of valuable cargo.
And we are aboard the Eleanor this evening, and she has 114 chests of tea on board. I have taken the liberty of hauling up 3 of the smallest and lightest chests, but even so, they could weigh up to 100 pounds! And they're very strong!
Picture Boston Harbor on that cold December night as men disguised in blankets and paint slipped aboard. They were not trying to steal the tea or hurt the crew. Their goal was to break open more than 300 chests and dump the tea into the water. For the protesters, destroying the tea was a way to say, we refuse to pay this tax and we refuse to be ignored. Down below deck, this was where all of that tea would have been stored.
As once past that lead lining, we use the back of our hatchets to break apart that densely packed loose leaf tea, no tea bags or bricks as you might have heard, until the entire chest is light enough that it can go over the side and into the harbor. Over the course of 3.5 hours this evening, in across the Eleanor, the Dartmouth, and the Great Beaver, we destroy a total of 92,616 pounds of tea. That's over 46 tons those of you keeping track, worth about 10,000 pounds sterling in my day, but just about $1.5 million in yours. Huzzah!
When the Boston Tea Party was over, nearly an entire ship's cargo had been destroyed. In today's money, that would equal more than $1 million. British leaders were furious. They closed Boston's harbor and sent more soldiers, hoping to scare the colonists into obedience. Instead, other colonies sent food and support to Boston. The protest on this ship helped unite people who would soon call themselves Americans. Back on deck, you may see people tossing replica tea crates overboard. The real protest was loud, risky, and carefully planned. No one was supposed to steal anything, and the ships itself were left unharmed. But it was still an illegal act of property destruction. Many of the men wore disguises that imitated native clothing and faces, a choice that unfortunately disrespected indigenous people whose lands were already being taken. Moments like this remind us that even famous protests can be both powerful and a little problematic at the same time. As we step back onto the pier, look once more at Boston Harbor and the Tea Party ships and museum. The protests that began in these streets and on this ship helped spark a revolution and the creation of a new nation. Today, Boston National Historical Park and its partners protect these places so we can ask hard questions about power, protest, and fairness. As you leave this virtual trip, think about your own world. When you see something unfair, what actions can you take to make your voice heard?